In 2026, a quiet but devastating shock is ripping through everyday life in America. More than 7,000 grocery and retail stores have already shut their doors across the country. But that number alone isn't the most alarming part. What's truly unsettling is that over 30 million Americans now live in food deserts, places where the closest supermarket can be 10 to even 20 miles away. At the same time, food prices are climbing faster than wages for every age group, hitting people over 50 especially hard. You might not notice the impact right away. Then one morning, it hits you. The grocery store you've relied on for years is suddenly closed. Your weekly food bill has jumped by 40%, and now you're forced to drive twice as far just to pick up a handful of basic necessities. That moment is when the reality becomes impossible to ignore. Behind those locked doors is an uncomfortable truth. America's grocery system is starting to fracture, affecting small local chains and massive corporations that were once thought to be untouchable. Even more shocking, the chain ranked number one in this video has shut down more than 390 locations due to financial losses, followed by another 44 closures caused by a disaster few people ever imagined could happen. So which grocery chain could take two massive hits back-to-back and still manage to stay afloat? Stick with this until the very end, because what's really happening behind the scenes will completely change how you see the American grocery system in 2026. 10. Kroger. For generations, Kroger stood as one of the pillars of the American grocery world. With more than 140 years behind it, thousands of locations nationwide, and deep roots in households led by people over 50, Kroger wasn't just a store. For many families, it was tied to memories of home-cooked meals and routine weekly trips. But in 2025, something unfamiliar began to surface. For the first time in decades, this massive company started pulling back. In its most recent earnings report, Kroger acknowledged plans to shut down roughly 60 stores over the next 18 months. It wasn't a dramatic collapse, but it was a signal that even giants are no longer immune. The traditional supermarket model is becoming harder to sustain in an economy that's evolving faster than corporate strategies can adapt. Inside Kroger's vast operation, the strain is unmistakable. Labor expenses climb every quarter. Fuel costs and supply chain pressures continue to spike like a lingering illness. The refrigerated trucks that restock shelves daily now cost more to operate than the average store earns in profit. And with industry margins sitting at just 1 to 3%, even minor shifts can carve deeply into earnings. Yet the most serious challenge isn't rising costs, it's shifting behavior. American shoppers, particularly middle-income households and older adults, are quietly but decisively changing how and where they shop. They're not abandoning Kroger out of frustration or dislike. They're simply choosing alternatives that better fit their needs. Walmart offers lower prices. Aldi delivers speed and simplicity. Dollar General is closer to home. Costco makes sense for long-term savings. Caught between all of them, Kroger finds itself stuck in the middle, without a clear identity. It isn't the cheapest, the fastest, or the most cost-efficient option anymore. In retail, being undefined can be more dangerous than losing outright. Adding to the uncertainty, Kroger's hoped-for merger with Albertsons remains stalled under antitrust scrutiny. The company can't move forward, and it can't fully pull back either. What once felt like an unstoppable system now resembles a ship forced to toss cargo just to stay afloat. But the real consequences don't show up first on financial statements. They appear on neighborhood maps. When a Kroger location closes, the void it leaves behind is often significant. In some towns, Kroger is the only full-service grocery store, offering fresh food, a pharmacy, and prices people can manage. Once it's gone, older residents may need to drive an extra 20 minutes just to buy essentials. Employees with a decade or more on the job suddenly find themselves unemployed. Nearby cafes, pharmacies, and laundromats slowly lose foot traffic as well. There's no explosion, no dramatic announcement. Just a quiet moment when someone pulls into a familiar parking lot and finds it empty, the doors locked, and a store closing sign swaying gently in the wind. Kroger hasn't failed. But it is changing in a way few ever imagined. A massive institution learning how to shrink in order to survive. And when one of the strongest players begins to retreat, it says a great deal about where the American grocery market stands in 2025. If what's happening to these grocery chains feels bigger than just an interesting trend, consider subscribing. This is only the beginning of much deeper disruptions, and you deserve to see them coming clearly, early, and without sugarcoating. 9. Albertsons. Some corporate names grow so large that people assume they're immune to economic turbulence. Albertsons has long been one of those names. But in 2025, a reality has surfaced that has sent shockwaves through the retail world. A company that owns household brands like Safeway, Vons, Jewel, and Osco is now entering the most vulnerable period in its nearly 90-year history. There's a quote often attributed to Steve Jobs that many corporations ignore until it's too late. If you don't disrupt yourself, someone else will. For Albertsons, that warning is no longer theoretical. The market itself is doing the disruption, and it's happening in real time. One of the most alarming signals comes from Rapid Ratings financial analysis. Albertsons has been flagged as having a very high risk of default, a designation few ever imagined would apply to a company of this size and legacy. Yet the data is difficult to argue with. A pension fund shortfall of roughly $565 million has left tens of thousands of employees deeply concerned about their financial future and long-term security. In parts of California, Washington, and Nevada, customers began noticing subtle red flags months before major headlines appeared. Store shelves emptied more quickly than usual. Products weren't restocked on time. Longtime employees quietly admitted that something felt off, that the store no longer operated the way it once did. A brand that used to signal stability and reliability for families has slowly become associated with uncertainty and quiet anxiety. The irony is hard to ignore. The multi-billion-dollar merger with Kroger, once viewed as the lifeline that could help both companies survive an increasingly brutal grocery landscape, has been stalled by antitrust regulators. Instead of serving as a rescue, the blocked deal has left Albertsons suspended in an uncomfortable limbo. Too weakened to fully stand on its own, yet legally prevented from joining forces to regain strength. As Albertsons falters, the consequences ripple outward. When a major grocery chain stumbles, entire communities feel the impact. Older adults lose a trusted and familiar place to shop. Nearby small businesses see fewer customers walk through their doors. Neighborhoods that rely on Albertsons as their primary food source suddenly find themselves edging toward food desert status. What truly unsettles people isn't the closure of a handful of stores. It's the realization that even companies once considered unbreakable are now struggling in an increasingly unpredictable America. If Albertsons, one of the nation's 3 largest grocery chains, is facing this level of instability, the deeper question becomes impossible to ignore. How much longer can anyone place full confidence in this system at all? 8. Safeway. When a long-established brand begins drifting into uncertain territory, many people over 50 on the West Coast feel it almost personally. For decades, Safeway wasn't just another grocery store. It was woven into daily routines. The red club card, the early morning stops for fresh bread, the quiet familiarity of knowing exactly where everything was. Most people assumed Safeway would always be there. But 2025 is telling a very different story. I once spoke with an elderly woman in Sacramento who shared something that stayed with me. She said, "At Safeway, I recognize every employee. At Walmart, I don't." That sense of recognition, of belonging, is exactly why Safeway's decline feels especially painful to so many longtime customers. The reality is that Safeway is being pulled down by a larger problem, and that problem is Albertsons. When the parent company struggles, its brands can't remain untouched. Across California, Washington, and Oregon, Safeway locations have quietly reduced inventory, shortened operating hours, and in some cases, closed altogether. What's unsettling is the lack of warning. There are no big headlines or public announcements. People only realize something is wrong when they pull into a parking lot and find it empty. Safeway isn't losing customers because people suddenly stopped caring. It's losing ground because it's trapped inside a bloated system it no longer controls. Antitrust investigations have frozen the merger that might have stabilized operations. Aging supply chains create constant bottlenecks. Meanwhile, labor costs on the West Coast continue rising faster than revenue can keep up. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the brand is being worn down. There's a quiet sadness in all of this. Safeway once symbolized the convenience and reliability of 20th century grocery shopping. Today, it's struggling to keep pace with the speed and expectations of the 21st century. The app feels clunky. Prices can't match Walmart or Winco. Younger shoppers gravitate toward Trader Joe's for affordability and experience, while older adults increasingly choose Costco for long-term value. That leaves Safeway stuck in the middle, like a loyal friend who simply can't run fast enough in a new race. I used to believe Safeway would hold on for several more decades, but watching stores thin out and shelves grow quieter made something clear to me. Even the most iconic brands have limits. Perhaps the most troubling part is what this means for smaller communities. In many places, Safeway isn't just a grocery store. It's the backbone of daily life. When it disappears, so does a sense of routine and stability. Safeway is changing in ways few people wanted or expected. But the real story emerges when individuals share what they're seeing themselves. Where you live, does Safeway still feel like it used to? Or have you noticed subtle, unsettling changes too? Share your experience in the comments, because those first-hand stories paint the clearest picture of what's really happening. 7. Amazon Fresh. When Amazon Fresh first appeared, it felt like the grocery industry had stepped straight into the future. Shoppers could wave a hand to enter, grab what they needed, and walk right out. No checkout lines, no cashiers, no awkward small talk. It was a vision so polished and futuristic that failure seemed almost impossible. Then, 2025 arrived, bringing an outcome few expected. One by one, those stores of tomorrow began closing their doors. What truly confuses people isn't just that Amazon Fresh locations are shutting down. It's the bigger question behind it. How does a technology powerhouse with enormous financial resources stumble in something as fundamental as selling groceries? The explanation lives in the details most people never saw. The Just Walk Out system relies on dense networks of cameras and sensors, each store costing millions to equip and maintain. That level of sophistication might make sense in tech, but grocery stores operate on razor-thin margins, often just a few percent. The smarter and more advanced the system becomes, the more expensive it is to run. And in food retail, higher costs make losses dangerously easy. I once visited an Amazon Fresh location in Woodland Hills. On the surface, everything looked flawless. But the illusion cracked the moment I reached the produce section. Sensors can track movement, but they can't keep vegetables from wilting. Artificial intelligence can process data, but it can't replace an employee who smiles and says, "These apples are especially good this week." It's a small human moment, yet one technology still can't replicate. Amazon can deliver a $600 refrigerator to your doorstep overnight, but it struggles to sell a $3 package of salad. That contrast says a lot. Human shopping habits aren't lines of code that can simply be rewritten. Older shoppers still want to ask questions. Middle-aged customers still check expiration dates carefully. Younger buyers still compare prices and expect better deals than what they can get at Trader Joe's. Amazon Fresh isn't failing because it lacks innovation. It's faltering because it misunderstood something deceptively simple. Grocery shopping isn't just a transaction. It's emotional, habitual, and deeply human. When a company that once transformed how the world shops is forced to scale back its own grocery experiment, it's more than a business setback. It's a warning sign about where the American grocery industry may be headed next. Has an Amazon Fresh store closed near you? And what was your experience with that cashier-free setup? Share your story, because real-world experiences reveal these changes more clearly than any headline ever could. 6. Save a lot. When the grocery store for the poor shuts down, where are people supposed to go? It's a short question, but in 2025 it sounds like a quiet sigh coming from across the country. Save a Lot was built for a single purpose: to sell food that low-income families could actually afford. When a discount grocer starts disappearing, it stops being just a business story. It becomes a warning about society itself. By 2025, Save-A-Lot continues to shrink after already closing or selling off more than 300 stores over the past decade. In states like Missouri, Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana, customers watch the same pattern unfold. Shelves slowly thinned. Fewer products appeared each week. Then, one morning, a simple store closing sign went up, often without explanation or notice. The issue has never been a lack of shoppers. Save-A-Lot stores were rarely empty. The real problem is harsher than that. Its customers are struggling financially, and their purchasing power alone isn't enough to keep the chain alive. Meanwhile, competitors that focus on extreme efficiency, Dollar General, Aldi, and Walmart Neighborhood Market, have turned low prices into a finely tuned profit machine. Save-A-Lot, burdened by a fragmented franchise structure, weaker supply chains, and limited capital, simply can't run at the same pace. It's not that the idea failed. It's that the system around it moved faster and harder than it could keep up with. What truly unsettles experts is what this signals beneath the surface. When a grocery store designed specifically for low-income communities can't survive, it suggests that working-class living conditions are worse than what economic reports reveal. The closure of a discount supermarket doesn't just create another food desert. It creates something deeper, a hope desert, where families are left with only higher-priced options they cannot realistically afford. Is Save-A-Lot still operating where you live? If you're over 50 and carefully counting every dollar spent on housing, groceries, and daily essentials, stories like this matter more than ever. Like and subscribe so each new update becomes an early warning, before changes like these begin affecting the choices you and your family are forced to make. 5. Winn-Dixie. In March 2025, something unsettling rippled through the retail landscape of the South. Grocers across the Southeast confirmed that additional Winn-Dixie locations would permanently shut down this year. These weren't rumors or temporary adjustments. They were real closures, unfolding so quickly that many neighborhoods had little time to react. For nearly a century, Winn-Dixie was part of everyday life in states like Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. It wasn't just a store. It was a familiar presence, so deeply rooted that many people assumed it would always be there. But 2025 is proving otherwise. Even a regional icon can't avoid the storm battering the grocery industry. So what pushed Winn-Dixie to this point? The first pressure comes from debt and operating expenses that have spiraled out of control. Transportation costs are now the highest the company has ever faced. At the same time, wages continue rising due to state labor laws, while the buying power of Southern households has dropped sharply after 3 straight years of inflation. Winn-Dixie no longer holds a clear advantage. It isn't the cheapest option. It isn't the fastest. And as shoppers become more practical with every dollar, brand loyalty alone is no longer enough to keep people coming back. Even more damaging is the age of the system itself. Many locations still rely on outdated point-of-sale technology. Restocking is slow and inefficient. Inventory tracking lacks consistency. Together, these weaknesses create a heavy burden, making each store closure feel like a piece of Southern memory quietly slipping away. When the red store closing signs began appearing, many residents finally understood what was happening. Winn-Dixie isn't just a supermarket. It sets the rhythm of the community. And now, that rhythm is starting to fall apart. Has a Winn-Dixie vanished near where you live? When did you first notice the change beginning? Share your experience because every story helps reveal how the map of the American South is being redrawn. 4. Sprouts. Farmers Market. I want to eat healthy, but I can't afford to live healthy anymore. That sentence came from a 58-year-old viewer under a previous video, and without realizing it, they captured the entire dilemma facing Sprouts Farmers Market in 2025. For years, Sprouts represented a middle ground. It was the place Americans went when they wanted cleaner food without paying Whole Foods prices. It stood for balance and intention. But as inflation drags on year after year, even good intentions come with a higher cost. A $9 box of strawberries. $5 for basic greens. Organic meat priced at double what traditional supermarkets charge. That level of pricing quietly pushes many middle-class households away, even those who genuinely care about what they eat. By 2025, Sprouts began quietly pulling back in states like California, Colorado, Arizona, and New York. In some cases, store signage vanished within a day or two. There were no press releases, no warning campaigns, no time to adjust. One day the store was there, and the next it simply wasn't. The uncomfortable reality is that Sprouts now sits in an awkward place. It's expensive, yet not compelling enough to justify the cost for many shoppers. The issue isn't declining quality. The issue is that in 2025, eating clean has stopped being an easy or accessible choice. For millions of Americans, it has become a luxury expense. And when families are forced to choose between healthier food and keeping the lights on, the decision doesn't take long. In your area, have you noticed Sprouts cutting back on fresh produce, reducing staff, or closing altogether? Share what you're seeing, because those first-hand observations offer the clearest signal of where Sprouts is really headed. 3. Lies Market. Few people expected a grocery chain once seen as a gentler, more approachable version of Trader Joe's to unravel this quickly. Yet in 2025, Lies Market has become one of the most surprising collapses for everyday shoppers. For years, it filled a rare gap, offering healthier food at prices that didn't feel out of reach. The welcoming atmosphere, cleaner product lineup, and modest costs made it a regular stop for many families. But the very qualities that once defined Lies Market turned into liabilities as the cost of producing organic food soared. By late 2024 and into early 2025, the company reported double-digit drops in revenue. Within weeks, multiple locations across Colorado, Florida, and Ohio closed their doors. A brand once praised as the future of affordable, clean eating is now disappearing with alarming speed. The deeper problem goes beyond timing. It's structural. Lies operated on extremely thin margins, while its competitors evolved faster and smarter. Trader Joe's refined its cost controls to an almost unmatched level. Whole Foods gained the financial muscle of Amazon. Sprouts expanded its reach and market share. Lies was left standing alone, and in today's grocery economy, standing alone is rarely enough. The uncomfortable truth is that the model itself wasn't wrong. It simply arrived in a different era. In 2025, being right doesn't guarantee survival. Shoppers now make food decisions based on what their wallets allow, not what their ideals prefer. As essential living costs continue to rise, the idea of affordable organic food starts to feel less like a plan and more like a fading dream. Lies Market didn't collapse because it failed to deliver quality. It collapsed because it was designed for a more financially comfortable America than the one people are living in today. In your area, are any Lies Market stores still open? And do you believe the idea of truly affordable organic groceries still has a future? Share your thoughts, because conversations like these reveal where food retail may be headed next. 2. Piggly Wiggly. Back in 1916, Piggly Wiggly changed the way Americans shopped forever. It introduced self-service grocery shopping, allowing customers to grab a cart, walk the aisles, and choose their own items. That simple idea became the foundation of modern supermarkets worldwide. Yet in 2025, the very company that pioneered this model is now struggling to survive within it. Piggly Wiggly isn't just another regional chain, it represents the birth of the grocery industry as we know it. But more than a century later, this once revolutionary brand is slowly being erased from the retail landscape. Not with headlines or public drama, but through quiet, steady closures that few notice until it's already over. Between 2022 and 2025, numerous locations across South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and Mississippi were forced to shut down because revenue simply couldn't keep up with operating costs. Stores that were once full of life during the 1980s and 1990s now sit empty. The familiar Mr. Pig signs have been taken down, replaced by small independent businesses, or left hanging in vacancy for months at a time. The reasons are no longer a mystery. Piggly Wiggly relies on an outdated franchise structure, inefficient logistics, and aging technology. It has no realistic way to match Walmart's aggressive expansion or compete with Aldi's rock-bottom pricing. As the grocery industry shifts toward extreme efficiency and razor-thin optimization, a system built on tradition alone has little room to adapt. What hurts people the most isn't just that Piggly Wiggly is closing, it's how it disappears. There are no announcements, no farewells. One day, the familiar pink sign at the end of the street is simply gone. And that raises an unsettling question. If the company that once shaped the future of grocery shopping can't survive today's economic storm, who actually has the strength to endure it? In your state, is there still a Piggly Wiggly operating nearby? Leave a comment. Real-world observations often tell a clearer story than any financial report ever could. 1. Family Dollar. When an entire nationwide chain begins to fall apart, it's usually because of slow losses or changing consumer habits. But what pulled Family Dollar under in 2025 was something far more extreme, an event unlike anything the American grocery and discount retail industry had ever seen. In less than 3 years, Family Dollar was forced to shut down 390 stores due to mounting losses and internal restructuring. That alone would have been devastating. But the true breaking point came from a disaster no one could have predicted. A massive rodent infestation triggered a federal emergency order that immediately closed 404 stores. 404 locations, overnight. Very few companies can survive a blow of that magnitude. This wasn't just a failure of operations. It was evidence that something deep inside the system had already decayed. When federal inspectors entered one of the company's distribution centers in Arkansas in 2022, what they found was disturbing. Food packaging gnawed open, rodent droppings contaminating merchandise, entire sections of inventory compromised. The fallout was historic. Family Dollar was forced to recall more than 1,000 products, marking one of the largest recalls ever recorded in the discount retail sector. That shock didn't fade quickly. It carried through 2023, 2024, 2025, and into 2026, stripping the chain of customer trust, severing supplier relationships, and eliminating any realistic path to recovery. Once confidence was gone, the decline accelerated. What makes Family Dollar's collapse especially painful is who it served. These stores are often located in low-income neighborhoods, areas where Dollar General or Walmart Neighborhood Market haven't expanded yet. For many families, Family Dollar wasn't just a convenience. It was the only affordable option within miles. When a Family Dollar shuts down, the community doesn't just lose a store, it loses access. Longer drives, higher prices, fewer choices. For some households, it means choosing between groceries and gas just to get to the next town. That's why Family Dollar ranks #1 on this list. Not because it was the largest chain, but because its disappearance leaves behind the deepest social void. So here's the final question. If even Family Dollar can't survive, what kind of future is taking shape? We've just walked through 10 grocery chains retreating from America faster than most people realize. But the most frightening part isn't the closures themselves. It's what replaces them. Empty buildings, higher food costs, longer commutes, and shrinking options in everyday life. If you're seeing this unfold in your own neighborhood, leave a comment. Real experiences paint the clearest picture of what America truly looks like in 2026. And if you want to stay ahead of the next economic shifts, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.